Power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
And now for another fast-breaking news story, we go to our roving reporter,
The podcast, Sovryn Tech. Its host, Dr. Brian Sovryn. The tech giants tried to stop Sovryn Tech. They can't.
The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, Dr. Brian Sovryn is here for another little bit of Sovryn Tech and working off of a new mic setup right now. Not like new as in recently purchased, but new as in my trusty Blue Yeti X, which I'm big fan of. But I'm not exactly sure what was going on with it. But it was creating, or I had an issue where the levels of volume were going up and down. Like it sounded like I was turning away from the microphone, which I don't do. If I do it, it's on purpose, it's for effect. And I've certainly done that in the past. Or if I'm talking to someone else who's, say in the room, like if Mrs. Sovryn is in the room. But regardless, it was creating that issue, and a couple of recent episodes had that problem where the sound levels were just going up and down, up and down. I tried changing wires, switching computers, whatever I could do to make that happen, and it just kept creeping up. So I have switched back to my what I call my field kit. And my field kit is the mighty H6. The H6 from Zoom, and I don't mean like the streaming the video conferencing company. I mean the microphone company. The H6 is really a studio, like in an entire studio in an incredibly small package. You can look up about it. There might even be the H6N now. They might have come out with an improved version, because I also have an H1N that I could have switched to that does a very good job. But the H6 that I have, a listener got this for me years ago. It was an incredibly gracious donation and gift, which, by the way, if you want to donate to the show, really appreciate it right now, and you can find all the links to do that. No PayPal, like I said, I've been banned from PayPal, but Cash App, Bitcoin, Venmo, take your pick on that. Or if there's a crypto you want to donate with specifically, you don't just message me via Telegram at Sovryn, or of course you can get in touch with me via email, questions@sovryntech.com, and we can work something out if you want to use a different crypto. But anyway, this was a tremendous gift. I mean, and it came with like a shotgun mic, all different types of like a cardioid mic, the well known for Zoom anyway. They're opposing faced stereo mic, which is what I actually have plugged into it right now. But it does have XLR ports on it to where you could hook up 4 microphones to it, and it's got it all, and all of the settings that you can mess with on it on the little LCD screen. Again, really, it's a studio in a very tiny package. I mean, this is the kind of equipment that gets used by, major media outlets. I mean, from like CNN to take your pick when they're out on the field. And so that's why I always call it my field kit. I mean, I even keep it in like a waterproof case, that looks like something you'd keep high-end weaponry in. But instead, my weapon is the microphone, proudly. But I love this thing, and I try to use it sparingly. Because it is such high-end equipment, but, it can take a beating. It's not like it can't handle day-to-day use, even over years and years and years. But I've went back to that. So if the audio sounds a little different, maybe it'll even sound a little better. But if the audio sounds a little different, that's why, is that I am using a different mic setup at this time. And I have it set up on a mic arm and everything. In fact, I had to get a little adapter that allows it to, use the tripod screw-in on the bottom of it, which is actually really handy because then I could do the same thing with the H1N if I wanted. I got to tell you, there are days where I think about, kind of leaving the stable, living in a home life behind. And, Ellen and I, we talk about that a lot. And I think, I could certainly run off of the H6, or I could even run off of the little H1N. The sound is so good that comes out of that. It's very much the H6 in a smaller package. Might not have the same quality, or, might not have all of the same features and ability to, adjust EQ and all these different things. But man, these are just great products. I really think every podcaster should have a portable Zoom setup of, not the video service or not the conferencing service, but a portable, some kind of portable mic setup that's fairly high end. You can, the H6 costs hundreds of dollars, but like the H1N you can get for around 100, maybe a little less. And I think that's a totally worthwhile investment for any podcaster. And when your main mic goes, well, you need a backup. Well, there it is, right? And that way you can keep going. Because I've spent the past 2 weeks really trying to figure this out. And it's limited what I've wanted to record because I'm like, I want to get this solved and have the best option available in studio here. But regardless, so we've got this set up, and, in the past couple weeks, some things have come to light that I want to talk about here. So enough talking about, new mic setups and everything. There is a little piece of software. It's actually a repository for apps that I have been a champion of and a fan of for it's got to be going on. It's got to be going on 11 years. As far as how long it's been around. And in many ways for me, it's been the only thing that's made Android palatable in any way. That's how important this is. In that, the thing that will, and it's not like, oh, well, otherwise I'd be on iOS. No, otherwise I wouldn't, touch anything other than maybe like a Pine phone or some other Linux phone. I wouldn't touch any smartphone, essentially, if this didn't exist. And I certainly wouldn't even touch like Android tablets of any kind, like a Kindle Fire, which are really the only, Android tablets taken seriously outside of China. And that app repository is F-Droid. Now you can find this at f-droid.org. Again, it's been around forever. It's only been getting better. It has it's an alternative to the Google Play Store. It's had a lot of tricks up its sleeve over the years that even best the Google Play Store, or that the Google Play Store years later would eventually copy, and realize, wow, what a great idea. For example, with F-Droid, you can download apps, and if you still have the APK file, which is the install file for the app, if you still have the APK file on your device, and say someone nearby locally wanted to download the app as well, they could actually download locally from your device that has the APK, say, in case they didn't have an internet connection, or even just to, save the data connection, right? Now the Google Play Store has gotten to the point of doing that. Actually, most companies have gotten to the point of doing that. Why? Because they can't handle the fucking server loads. It's hilarious how we spent years where Google, Apple, Microsoft, all the tech giants were trying to push everybody into online, always on, always connected, blah, 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 no offline functionality, when it comes to things with smartphones and maybe even with computers. And now, actually for a few years now, we've been backpedaling that, right? Or the tech giants have been backpedaling that. I even opened up on my daily driver phone here, the Moto G Power, which, is more stock, right? I haven't done anything with it. As far as putting Lineage OS or anything else on it, partly due to that I have the advanced protection program on it, which is a good idea for any journalist to do. And like I went into the Google Play Store and it said, like right at the top, it said offline games available. I mean, they really promoted that these games, and it was like Castlevania Symphony of the Night or whatever, which, I mean, hey, you know, if you're going to have a game on your phone, it might as well be one of the greatest of all time. But I couldn't believe that they were promoting that. They were really promoting the offline functionality of these games. And it's also funny too, because my game company is actually called Zomi Offline Games, which is also about to celebrate, it will soon celebrate about 10 years of existence. And, you know, I mean, I was ahead of this whole, like, no, we want games that are offline. Don't, you know, no DRM, none of that horse shit. Not to say that the offline games Google was promoting were, you know, offered offline or offered no DRM. But, you know, the idea of like, okay, no, it's a good thing to have games that function offline, don't have any internet connectivity, never talk to a server, just ahead of the curve of that, I guess. But I bring this up to say that, well, you know, you have most companies now are realizing, holy shit, we can't handle the server load. But, you know, if somebody could just pull a Windows update from another Windows machine that's likely on the same network, wow, would that save us a whole ton of bandwidth and at the end of the day, a whole ton of money. Of course, it's not really saving you money, the consumer. It's saving, the whatever corporation. Anyway, that's a functionality that in many ways I think F-Droid pioneered. F-Droid is ultimately a pioneering app, or at least it has been. And I've written, you know, the security guides for Android. Okay. Like the guide I wrote. Okay. And it's something that I need to update. And the sad part is, and what makes it hard to update that book is like the way that just the landscape changes, even just for Android. It changes seemingly by the minute, maybe even shorter than that. And one of my top recommendations in that book is to use F-Droid as your mainstay to get apps from, right? Because you never know when something's going to get banned from the Google Play Store or when something is, you know, whatever's going to happen. And the Google Play Store is so large, it really, you know, it's a hotbed for a lot of apps. It's a hotbed for malware and other things. Now, Google, you know, takes its steps to try and mitigate that. But a lot of times you get, you know, dolphins caught in with the tuna. And also, can you trust what Google, you know, puts in their own Play Store? No. It's all spying on you. It's like, well, I'm glad they're handling malware from other parties, but really everything Google puts out there is effectively malware, certainly malware towards your privacy. So, you know, the F-Droid store has been, just essential if you're somebody that cares about privacy and, dare I say, you know, security, which privacy and security are two separate things, but when they work in concert, the sound is unmatched. Now, while many apps that are available in the F-Droid app repository, App Store, are also available in the Google Play Store, there are many that are not, just like vice versa. And of course, I'd say that that's a good thing, right? Like you're not going to install the official Instagram app from F-Droid. Likewise, there are things you will not install that are available on F-Droid that are not in the Google Play Store. For example, my favorite mobile web browser, desktop is a different story, but my favorite mobile web browser is what's called Fennec, Fennec. And this is a modified, stripped version of Firefox for Android. And the only way that you can get it, other than maybe downloading the APK separately, you know, from like a website, the only way you can get it is through the F-Droid store. It's not through Google Play. And this is true for many apps. Many people see, they look at F-Droid in two lights, okay? One is the ethical light of, okay, so what's on F-Droid is generally, this is like power user stuff most of the time, but it's generally like there are specific criteria for what allows you to be included on F-Droid. It has to be open source. You have all the proper, GPL licensing, all of that. So some people see that as that's why F-Droid is a good thing, because you can count more on the security of these apps compared to what gets schlepped onto the Google Play Store, okay, or from the Google Play Store. Because certainly, are Facebook apps secure? By no means. It's easy to argue that they're all rootkits or Trojan horses. It's easy to argue that the entire Google Play Store is a rootkit, right? So the other light that F-Droid gets seen is that it's a safe haven for apps that, for whatever reason, and not because they're malicious, from a data standpoint, okay, that, apps that could be seen as malicious, by, say, even Apple or Google. There was the issue where, Element was not available, which is, the front end app for the Matrix protocol, or for Matrix, chat app / social media. That wasn't available for a little while in the Google Play Store, but it was available on F-Droid. And in fact, when it got banned, or when it got removed, we shouldn't necessarily say banned here, but we're going to talk about apps getting banned. That's the whole point of this episode. When it got removed, suddenly the guys at Element.io, they said, oh, well, shit, let's make sure our F-Droid app is up to date. And they started taking that very seriously. So it's also seen as a safe haven from the tech giants, who, can, for whatever reason, at any whim, remove your app. Now, throughout 2020 and early parts, and really going into it, even going further into it to now, and I don't see the trend changing, but throughout 2020 and certainly the early parts of 2021, the concern around censorship of apps because of perhaps their use to engage in what get perceived as revolutionary acts, say like on June 6th, I don't think there's anything revolutionary about that at all. Give me a fucking break. It's a goddamn joke. But a bad one. Somebody died, people died, but still just outrageous. But again, app censorship claimed around that, or, it could be around COVID concerns, matters, conversations, why things get banned. Of course, earlier in the year, we did an episode about this, how Telegram was rightfully so sweating, right? That they were going to get banned by Apple. They've had issues with Apple in the past already. And there's even the issue of, okay, yeah, Telegram's still in the Apple App Store or in the iOS App Store and still available in the Google Play Store. But both of those, the versions you get in both of those app stores, are subject to censorship in that certain channels that you can access, or groups that you can access via Telegram, will be, will essentially disappear, or you won't be able to see what's in them if you downloaded the version of Telegram from either of those app stores. Now, if you download Telegram FOSS, which is available in the F-Droid store, that's not an issue. Or you can download officially from Telegram, from their own website, you can download a version of Telegram for Android that is completely independent and actually has its own independent update cycle and gets features before the quote-unquote official versions because this is still an official version anyway, but official versions that are in the Google Play Store or in the iOS App Store, okay, which is a great move on Telegram's part to be proactive and say, hey, we could get banned at any moment. Why don't you come and download the app from our website? It's the official app, and we're going to incentivize it by giving you features that either A, are not possible in either of the two major app stores, or, you'll get them quicker because, of course, Apple's review via the iOS store, app store is just, insane. I want things to be secure, sure. But at the same time, it seems pretty clear that they're holding back, or their extensive review on Telegram's part has more to do with concerns around, or has more to do with censorship than it does with concerns around, any kind of malicious code. So again, pointing at the importance of F-Droid, why I have been talking about installing and using F-Droid for the entirety of Sovryn Tech's run. Also, why actually, something else I've been a champion of for as many years is we got to get to the point where, people can install or, even initially, like the best way that they want to get their software on, say, their Android smartphone is by going to the developer's website, not to an app store at all, just going straight to their website and downloading it from there. And this is something that increasingly I've seen more apps and their developers allow for. One of my favorite cryptocurrency wallets, that being the Edge wallet, has allowed for this for some time. Telegram, like I said, allows for this. Another one of my favorite messaging apps, Threema, which I actually gave the title of the ultimate messaging app, allows for that, for you to download, even pay for it completely independently of any app store. And actually, even beyond that, like Threema is one thing, but the app that I really love, okay, is Briar. The Briar app. Now that is the right direction, that mobile devices should be going in, where you can communicate without even sending data to the telcos, right? Where it can completely use all the radios that, that your smartphone, it's only available on Android, but that your smartphone is capable of, like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi Direct, and so on. And you could communicate without, Verizon, right? Without T-Mobile, which don't use T-Mobile, right? Did anyone else catch that leak? Am I the only one? Anyway, no, of course I'm not. But Briar is as good as it gets. Now you can download that directly from their website. You can get it in the F-Droid App Store as well. It's also in Google Play. And part of the challenge though is getting these apps to update more on their own. Now, like what the Edge wallet does when you download that, and there's other cryptocurrency wallets, like you could go with Mycelium. They allow for independent downloads. And if you're really into Signal allows for a independent version to get downloaded from their website and so on. Like the Edge wallet will tell you there's a new version of Edge wallet, please download it, right? And so with that little message coming up, it won't auto update, but it's something that it will let you know to go to their website and download the latest version, right? Telegram has it built in, has an updater built in, and it tells you when it's going to update and so on. And that's the right direction to go. That takes a lot of work. There's other challenges around this independent install, especially if you don't have Google's version of Android on your smartphone, because the notification services, as in how you get notified that you have a message, operates through Google's servers, their notification servers. And when you're not using a Google version of an app, you can run into that if you also are not using Google's Android. That is a challenge that companies are working on and setting up their own notification servers and whatnot. For wallets, that's not necessarily an issue, right? Because you're usually being very active when you're engaging with a cryptocurrency wallet. But for messaging apps, that can kind of be a concern. Briar sort of gets around that, partly because, the thing is, when it's active, it's just always active. And that's one of the challenges around that app is the battery drain. But something that I think can be worthwhile if you feel the need to use the Briar app. And they've been working on the battery drain aspect of things for some time. But regardless, going in the direction, getting people used to, training people, for lack of a better phrase, or at least incentivizing people to go to a developer website to download an app without an app store, without even bothering with an app repository, is a fine and dandy, wonderful thing in the direction that we need to go. Why? And is that crazy? By no means. It's what we've done with computers forever, up until recently, when computers started to shift more towards the app repository model that, smartphones have had for, ever since really iOS, right? Came onto the scene in 2007? Anyway, until that time, and again, I think that time is coming and growing. Until that time, F-Droid has been my recommendation, as far as how to get apps. And this is true for, your Google Android smartphone, your Lineage OS version, fork of Android, whatever, essentially Android-based device you're using, whatever flavor that happens to be, F-Droid is the place to go, even with a Kindle Fire. Was it this year? If it wasn't this year, it was late in 2020. But I did a full breakdown and review of the Kindle Fire 8 HD Plus, which I think is a fine tablet, but it's only a fine tablet because you can put F-Droid on it. And it's also easy to put the Google Play Store on there, admittedly, and the Amazon App Store is already there, but we already know the challenges around that. But you can put F-Droid on it and, install all kinds of wonderful things, and it becomes, a fantastic tablet. However, information has crossed my bow that makes me question whether or not we should still be using F-Droid, and whether I will continue to recommend F-Droid going into the future. And I'm not exactly sure how I didn't hear about this sooner. I was alerted to it in the Sovryn Tech Telegram group, which, thank you, listeners, for always keeping me abreast of, a lot of the latest news going on. And the funny thing was, so that's how I found out about it. I think how it came to more people's attention recently was that there was an official policy change request done on August 28th, 2021. But it was a policy change request referencing a policy change on F-Droid's part by the F-Droid team, which is a group of volunteers. Let's be fair to them. There's not like a ton of money involved here. You can donate, via the F-Droid app, whatever, with PayPal or, crypto or whatever, and that's great. But it is a group of volunteers. But they had decided in 2019 to engage in they did a policy change, and this was, almost 2 years ago. It was in July of 2019 that they decided to do it. And what they had decided, now it's important to keep this in mind about 2019. Because I feel like a little bit of a goof that I did not hear about this, that I did not see this happen. But I also find it strange that it wasn't more cried about, because in 2019 I still had some presence on social media, and with my social media listening, I feel like this should have come up, or someone should have reported on it. I don't know that Android Police did, or any of these others, because this is kind of a big deal. But it's important to keep in mind that this happened in 2019 because this was pre-COVID, and this was also pre January 6th, right? Pre that nonsense that happened in Washington, D.C. So it's not in response to those two things. Clearly, it's in response to, the orange idiot that was, as compared to the silver idiot that's in office right now. They're all idiots, but clearly it was in response to the orange idiot that was in office, and it was in response to, perhaps, I guess maybe the election cycle started to ramp up at this point. But what happened is F-Droid in July of 2019 decided to start banning apps, not for reasons of, malicious code or anything like that, or that they broke the inclusion, the necessary inclusion rules, to be on F-Droid in itself, which those did not change. But they did it in their own words, they did it for political reasons. And the app in particular that was getting banned was Gab, which Gab is I suppose it would call itself a free speech social network, right? And kind of a federated one at that. Which, hey, okay, that's going in somewhat of a right direction. I do not use Gab. I don't care ultimately about Gab. It doesn't mean a damn to me. I am sure, and maybe more so than some others, but like every single social media or messaging or communication software, that there are incredibly shitty, despicable, horrible people doing horrible things on there, just like there are on Facebook, just like there are on Twitter, just like there are on Instagram, just like there are on Take Your Pick. Okay, they're everywhere, just like there are on the internet at large. There might be a greater concentration of them there. Okay, maybe. It's known to be really popular with conservatives, which, fuck them, but fuck liberals too. I'm not going to play favorites here. There's no favorites. I'll gladly say fuck you to every ideology. Take your pick of an ism. So the volunteers at F-Droid decided, however, that the Gab app, which, I think had been banned, if not at that point by, other app stores, that was soon to come, but they did ban it. In fact, I'll read directly from their public post about the matter. So let's see. To recap the situation, a website joined the Fediverse only half a month ago that is well known to be a free speech zone, meaning it claims to tolerate all opinions. While in theory this might seem to be a good concept, it has serious consequences. Things like racism, sexism, verbal abuse, violent nationalist propaganda, discrimination against gender and sexual minorities, anti-Semitism, and a lot more things become popular on such instances. I think the key one there would probably be violent nationalist propaganda. That's basically a whistle for, anti-Trump, which, hey, I'm anti-Trump too. But anyway, moving along. They go on. F-Droid as a project soon celebrates its 9th birthday. So at this time in 2019, it was only 9 years old. In these 9 years, F-Droid's mission was and is to create a place where people could download software they can trust, meaning only free, Libra, and open source software is available on its flagship repository. Now, Stallion, breaking in for a second. That there's a key phrase here that we're going to talk about. Because are we going to end up saying, don't use F-Droid? Let's find out. But that key phrase is flagship repository. As a project, it tried to stay neutral all the time. But sometimes staying neutral isn't an option, but instead will lead to the uprise of previously mentioned oppression and harassment against marginalized groups. We don't want and won't support that. F-Droid is taking a political stance here. Now, to break some of this down, is as a project, they wanted to try and stay neutral all the time. But sometimes staying neutral isn't an option. I don't agree with that statement at all. Okay. I just don't. And in fact, I think Telegram's popularity comes from Pavel Durov's almost public stance of remain neutral at all times. Okay. Frankly, this is kind of madness to say that even in a political sense, because that's really what they're talking about here is not being neutral politically. How many world disasters have the existence of politically neutral territories saved the day, right? Like, ironically, in fact, they brought up anti-Semitism. How many more Jews would be dead if Switzerland wasn't neutral during World War II? And I say this as a Jew myself, right? How many would have been offed if it wasn't for that? What, you think, oh, well, yeah, but no. The right stance was the United States politically, right? Because they came in and saved the Jews and, they were going, they would protect it and they were the, kind of the opposing ideology. Au contraire, this is something that came to light probably about a decade ago now that FDR, right? The great savior. Yeah, right. Just another idiot. But FDR was going to give the Jews a territory to live in, but he was going to give them I think there were a couple options. He was thinking either Arizona or Oregon, and the idea was, to give them the shittiest, to their mind, the shittiest territories that they could within the United States. He was just going to toss them all into their own country. And when you read the letters of FDR, what he said about the Jews, no, this guy wasn't pro-Jew whatsoever. The only thing that was really pro-Jewish, ironically, was the country that had a completely neutral stance in the whole disaster, that being World War II. So just politically, I call bullshit on F-Droid's thinking. Because really the only way to protect the marginalized is to remain neutral. Okay, is to create that space where it's, where there aren't political stances. Because you never know when a political stance, much like the one F-Droid's taking, can end up getting used against whatever group, right? You never hand somebody a gun unless you know where they're going to point it. Of course, I would argue never hand anybody a gun. But if you're going to, Don't do so unless you know where they're going to point it, right? And that's essentially every political stance is effectively a gun. And in this case, Gab got shut down. And my concern, and I think the concern of many, is that, well, if Gab can get shut down for, what could be seen as arbitrary reasons, or you could, well, I'm probably going to mix languages here, but raison, can I say it this way? Does this make sense? All right. Raison de jour, right? The reason of the day, whatever that happens to be trending on Twitter, is what you're going to react to. And that's increasingly how people are operating. There's no actual long-term action of any kind. It's always, okay, what's happening today? Let's address it. And don't worry, because tomorrow it'll be forgotten. Again, fuck Gab. I don't give a shit about Gab. Okay, what I do care about is that you have a app repository, you have a, dare I say, what was a safe space, if I want to use the probably terms they'd like, a safe space, a safe haven for apps that do come under pressure from, political agendas and other agendas. And that can help. And I'm not saying Gab is this necessarily, but again, I worry, what does it take? In fact, I'm amazed Telegram FOSS, which is one of the most popular apps in the F-Droid repository. I'm amazed that hasn't been shut down yet. Really, if the concern is, well, hate is getting spread through this, you should shut down Fennec, right? Shut down all the web browsers available in the F-Droid store. Because for fuck's sake, you have access to any website on the internet, and there's a lot of hate out there. And there is. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It absolutely exists. There's hate and all the horrible things that F-Droid is talking about is absolutely out there. But if you're going to try and stop that and stop those grounds from getting accessed or spread, you're going to have to shut down the fucking internet. Now, like I said, F-Droid could actually do that because F-Droid can function in many ways without the internet, right? Because you could just share APKs locally, like we were talking about earlier. So, they could go that far if they wanted. So they can't say to me, well, Stallion, that's ridiculous. Oh, no. No. To your credit, you set it up so actually you could kind of function that way, right? The only thing that's nonsense here is your political stance itself. The idea that Gab could be used for this, everything can be used and is being used to spread, the worst parts of human nature. I'm not here saying that shit's not going on and that it doesn't exist. It absolutely does. And it's probably far worse than anybody could imagine. Okay. And I'm not saying on Gab, I'm saying in the world in general. Oh, but Brian, there's Nazis out there. Yes, there are. And I think they're in the U.S. government, including right now. Are you calling Biden a Nazi? Yeah, actually, I am. We don't need to get into that historical diatribe, but I think Nazis have been running the U.S. government for decades now. Bottom line, this is a nasty bit of business on F-Droid's part. This is absolutely not the direction to take things. What do I think was their thinking here? Do I think that they actually gave a shit about marginalized groups? Yeah, I can imagine some of them would. A bigger part of me feels like, and this clearly backfired because I should have heard about this in 2019. It should not have taken somebody recently requesting a policy change for me to notice. I think that this was attention grabbing. This was, okay, how can we get more people using F-Droid? Just like when Firefox in 2020 was taking and this is the reason that Firefox is no longer my top recommended browser on mobile or on desktop. Because they took a preposterous political stance when Firefox's whole, the reason people loved it so much is the same reason that they love F-Droid, is that, it's open source, it's neutral, it's not dealing with company politics or whatever, but then it did become not just company politics, but politics in general. And I think that was totally a part on Firefox's part, or Mozilla's part, I should say. That was absolutely an attention grabber and a way to increase install base. That's all that was about. And there's a part of me that can't help but think, is that the same thing that happened here in 2019? I mean, maybe could they have been feeling some kind of squeeze from, large donors to the project? I don't know, but this is ridiculous that this occurred. And once you open that doorway to political stances, I mean, it's very tough to close it, and it's very tough for, me. In fact, I just noticed this. So there's a text editor that I use a lot called T Editor. And I don't know what changed, but the other day, so I had it installed on my Fire tablet specifically. And when I opened it up, it said, this app will no longer receive updates through F-Droid. I mean, and this just happened in the past week. Again, what happened with Gab happened 2 years ago. Okay. I don't know what exactly is going on here. I reached out to the developer to try and find out. I haven't gotten a response yet. I was hoping to, but this just happened just before I went to record this. And it said, if you want to, download this app, you can do one of three things. Like, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get updates through F-Droid anymore. You can either download it on the Google Play Store. You don't want to do that. You can download it on the Amazon App Store. I found that to be interesting. Not a surprise, because I think a lot of developers are getting ready for when Windows 11 has Android apps built into it. Of course, we know that's not happening at launch for Windows 11, and fuck Microsoft. But and then the third way. So, but I mean, using the Amazon App Store on a Fire tablet makes sense, right? I mean, it's there. You're not really going to get rid of it unless you completely wipe the device, and put something else on it, some other ROM on it. Or you could go to the developer's website, which fucking right on. There you go. Get people used to just downloading directly from your website. Nice. I thought that was good. But what was behind that decision? Did that developer also find out because of this, request for a policy update that happened at the end of August of 2021? Did he suddenly hear about that and say, well, fuck this? I mean, it's weird too, because like T Editor was one of the recommended apps on kind of like the what's new, or what's hot and new and whatever on the front, I guess you could call the front page, the store page or whatever of F-Droid. So it's shocking to me that the developer made that call. But maybe he had an ethical stance similar to the one that I'm saying, is that, no. You can make decisions based upon security, and privacy, but as far as code goes, as far as data goes, but we don't need, we need dumb software. We don't need software that's making calls based upon, purely political stances. Because again, that's an arbitrary metric. Security and privacy, baking that into your app, into your software, that in and of itself stands against oppression, right? Because it keeps you from getting censored. And it doesn't matter who we're talking about. And again, it's all up to the group of the day. Who gets censored today, right? Now, let's be fair. As, again, F-Droid is operated by a group of volunteers, okay, a private group. It's barely even, you couldn't even really call it a private company, but if you wanted to, okay, I don't even think that it goes that far, but do they have the right to choose what can they arbitrarily choose what can and cannot exist on their app, in their app repository? Particularly, like we said, we got to be careful with these terms, their flagship app repository. Yeah, sure. Of course they have that right. If we believe in rights, of course they have the right to do that. All right. Or sure. Does Twitter, are they within their rights as a company to ban whatever account that they want to ban? Sure. But then also, when you do that enough times, are you going to keep using Twitter? No, because you're going to, why would you build a business around something that you could get kicked off of out of nowhere? You lose trust in the company as this occurs. With F-Droid, it's the same situation. And when, again, you say to yourself, well, that's great. Or how about this, right? So like Patreon, I think this should have been a teaching moment, a learning moment for many. Even I was incredibly happy when they banned Lauren Southern, from Patreon. Why was I happy about that? Because we're talking about a woman who is absolutely responsible and proud of, the death of people who were just trying to flee tyranny, and I think she was partly responsible for the sinking of boats, that killed people. She's an absolutely disgusting human being, just flat out. And then, what does Patreon do? How far does that go? Then it gets to a point, after a few months where, well, shit, this cosplay gal, what was her name? Riddle, I think, that's not her, that's like her handle. Riddle, she posts a picture of herself wearing a bathing suit of the Canadian flag because she's Canadian. She's proud of that, in fact. And she pours maple syrup, all over her boobs. She gets banned from Patreon for adult content or offensive content, whatever. If they're offended with the flag with maple syrup on the Canadian flag, I don't know. I kind of just think that makes sense. There's a fucking maple leaf on the damn thing. Come on, right? And so while at first you can say, oh, well, good thing, they got fucking, the hate monger, Lauren Southern off of there. But then, again, once that door opens, then suddenly it goes so far as to, oh shit. Now they're banning people, for, depending upon a person's taste. I'm going to just say, well, it could be conventionally seen as sexy or whatever. Riddle knows, her crowd, and then it goes to that. Right. And then you're like, well, okay. So Patreon, that's where a company goes too far, and you can't build your business on a company that is willing to do that doesn't remain neutral. Again, the only safe havens you can have, the only places you can really count on, the only places that will protect, minority groups, that would protect minority opinions, whatever, okay, or marginalized. Maybe let's not even use minority, but marginalized opinions, marginalized whatever, marginalized taste, marginalized everything are those spaces that remain completely neutral. So we know now how this goes. And I don't like to base decisions upon, that which is only theoretical or hasn't happened, meaning how many other, potential apps that could have been helpful to protesters in varying forms, whatever shape that they may take, whether it's in Hong Kong or go down the list. How many apps weren't allowed to flourish because of this kind of policy, or the concern that, well, there's no place for my, there's no safe haven for my app to be able to thrive and distribute. So this is a very real problem with wide-ranging detrimental effects. Now, let's talk a bit about solutions, okay, around this. Because again, no, this isn't right. What are the solutions here? Now, the first thing that people probably think is that, okay, I could just go and there's other app stores for Android. It's one of the real benefits of using Android is it's somewhat more open natured. When you're talking about Google's Android with Lineage OS, it's very open. But that ability to, have different app stores or, the ability to independently even install apps without having to, and really you can do it without jailbreaking, or without rooting the device. Jailbreaking is an Apple term, but without rooting the device, as we'd say in Android, or unlocking it, you can take advantage of these things as long as you hit the right checkbox or whatever and allow for third-party software. But there are other app stores. Now, you may think that, well, that's the direction to go. Maybe. However, none of the other app stores really solve the issues that I feel like F-Droid solves. Okay, which is why I don't really see them as viable. I know a lot of people get excited about the Freedom Phone that was getting developed, which is like the smartphone for conservatives, which, okay. But my problem with it has been from day one is that it looked like it was using the Aurora App Store. Now, the Aurora App Store, in fact, I talked about this when I was on the Agora podcast. The Aurora App Store, that just pulls APKs from the Google Play Store. It's essentially a front for the Google Play Store. You're not solving censorship. if the issue here is censorship with F-Droid, what they did to Gab, which that is the issue, and it is an issue, the Aurora App Store is not going to solve shit. And the Freedom Phone, frankly, isn't going to solve shit. But that's an entirely separate conversation. But the Aurora App Store, sure, that's out there, but that doesn't really solve anything. The Amazon App Store, well, you're still dealing with Amazon, and they're going to censor, they will censor. I don't know. I was going to say they'd probably censor faster than Google or Apple, but I don't know that that's necessarily the truth. If you have a Galaxy phone, right, a Samsung phone, there is the Samsung Galaxy Apps Store, which does run independently. There's that, but then to believe, Samsung's one of the tech giants, right? They're part of the Sinister Six, as I've called them. Are they really going to, stand up against censorship? Likely not. There's the Yelp Store. That hasn't been updated in a while. I don't know how confident I feel about that. There's Aptoide. I think that's how you pronounce that, Aptoide. That's, could be seen as an option. But a lot of these don't really offer like particularly unique apps like the F-Droid App Store does. So I don't know how much I, would really count on them. There are a lot of app stores that are more regional, right? Where they serve more of an Asian audience or a Middle Eastern audience or, whatever. So, there's app stores all over the place. There's app alternatives that some of which do go beyond the Google Play Store. You could download apps from APK Mirror, right? The problem with that is APK or, Google's APK model is switching more towards bundles. And so this independent install, especially on a device that is running, say, Lineage OS or something like that, becomes a little more of a challenge. So APK Mirror, I think, is kind of going its usefulness is starting to wane when it comes to wanting to download like major apps, right? Like if for some reason you just have to have the Instagram app or whatever. Keep in mind too, a lot of the bigger social media apps you can just use in a web browser, right? Or use them as a progressive web app, right? As a PWA. You can do that with Twitter. You can do that with Instagram, and they work great as progressive web apps. So, to some degree, I don't get where a lot of these people are freaking out about, oh, I can't access this app or whatever, when you can very easily do it in the web browser. And again, it speaks to the point that if the F-Droid team wanted to be consistent, they should have been banning all web browsers along with Gab, right? Because you could access Gab with a web browser. One that I would bring to mind. So like I said, the ultimate solution is that we're downloading apps directly from developer websites. Okay. There is, it's not really an app store, but it's called APK Updater. And APK Updater, what that essentially does is it will just cross-reference what you have installed on your smartphone, and it'll cross-reference it with a list to see if you are using the latest version, and it will let you know, and it can help with the install of that. So something like APK Updater can be a useful service. Okay, I don't know how long it'll be around or actively developed, but that can be a very useful thing, especially if you're going the independent route. But what I think is the real answer here. Now, you could say from an ethical standpoint, I am not going to deal with F-Droid because they are willing to do this. However, there's something strange, in my opinion, about how F-Droid went about this. F-Droid did not do a blanket, like, and in fact, here's the funny thing that almost proves the point of why having the neutral model is so important. So F-Droid itself there is the F-Droid app repository, but the F-Droid app is in itself separate from the app repository. The F-Droid app is an app that gives you access and gives you functionality around varying app repositories. So if you went into the F-Droid app right now, okay, you would find there'd be in the settings, you could find a listing for repositories. And there's like 4 or 5 that you'll find. Some of them are just like archive versions of older, like F-Droid repositories. But you'll see at least 2 major ones. One is the F-Droid app repository, which, believe it or not, you can turn off. And the other is for the Guardian project, which, has been made, has developed Tor-enabled apps for many years. Big fan of them. And that's actually not on by default. And you can turn it on, and then you can get access to the Guardian Project's varying apps. Now, there's the rub, is that F-Droid not only allows, it also tells you, in fact, I'll link to it in the show notes to show you how to do it. It allows you to create your own app repositories and have the F-Droid app just be the app, allow for the App Store functionality for your own repository. So if Gab wanted to, Gab could create its own F-Droid app repository, and F-Droid, they can't block that, okay? Because you'd have to put in the link for the app repository itself into F-Droid, and then you'd have access to it, and you could update it all the time or whatever. I don't know why Telegram doesn't do this either. Well, anyway, that could get into a bigger subject, but my point being, you don't have to stop using F-Droid itself, because F-Droid itself, the app even, not just the repository, but the app itself is open source. So you can just fork F-Droid anytime you want and then set up your own app repository within it. And you don't have to access F-Droid's app repository. Maybe this is a popular thing and I haven't seen the F-Droid forks out there. But that's the direction to go. Look, F-Droid's fucking brilliant how it's set up. It's great work. That the team there, that team of volunteers are doing dynamite technical work. There's no question on that, in my opinion. Their political stances are nuts, but then for some weird reason, they're not nuts. I get where they're coming from, okay? It's misguided. It's extremely misguided. But for some strange reason, they still allow you to circumvent their own political stances within the app itself. And I wonder about that. I wonder, I always have this, there's an old Sovryn Tech saying, and it is a Sovryn Tech saying. No one else says this. Because everybody always says, follow the money. I say there's some usefulness to that, but I always say, no, don't follow the money. Follow the attitude. Now, there's a very ugly attitude here in not wanting to remain neutral, no doubt. However, the app ultimately is still neutral. And they even were very particular in what they wrote, saying that they're not allowing for it in their flagship repository. It was almost like someone was hinting at, hey, yeah, it's not in our flagship repository, but you can still do it. You could still get Gab or whatever, however you want to set this up on there. Fuck, there's a part of me that almost wants to run my own F-Droid app repository, and then you'd have the Sovryn Tech, app repository or something, right? And I could just, put in, whatever varying apps. There's a part of me that almost wants to do that. But again, really anybody can. Go make the free speech app repository. Whatever, it's odd to me. In one sense, and I even said this in the Telegram group when I found out about this. I was like, oh man, I'm getting behind the mic to talk about this and hell's coming with me, because I was so pissed off because I've been so supportive. And I think that the F-Droid app, has been such a wonderful thing for so many years. And, to potentially lose it, fuck, that sucks. But not unlike how, you can use Fennec, right? Which is a web browser based off of Firefox, but it's not Mozilla's, bullshit political stances. Just like the Tor browser, takes advantage of, Firefox as well, without, you having to use Firefox. You could really do the same thing with F-Droid. And anytime I don't see these solutions that I think of after about maybe, 5 to 10 minutes or less, of thinking about it, anytime that I don't see that being done by the the oppressed, like Gab, sorry, I just really don't care about those people. Okay. And anytime I don't see that happening, and it doesn't appear to have happened, because again, this was 2 years ago. It's not like they haven't had time. I there's the part of me that feels like, well, should you really be running a service like this? How can, well, anyway, we could get into other occurrences with these kinds of apps what was the Parler? Was that the other one? And then there was that huge data leak, and it kind of proves the point, right? Like, you're crying about censorship. You won't take the actions that could actually make your app available to other people. And I sweat, because like, what technical know-how do you have? You know what I mean? What business do you have doing business in this space if you're not really willing to implement the simple solutions? It bothers the fuck out of me, and it gives me no confidence in what you're developing. And, for example, can this be done right? Well, Free Talk Live got banned off of social media in varying ways, right? Free Talk Live, a Sovryn Tech sponsor, for full clarity. Free Talk Live got banned. And what did they do? They went and built their own social media. Now, they didn't just, say, okay, well, let's go on this service or whatever, and build like a group there or something like that. They set up their own servers, the whole fucking thing. They did it right. They took the open source software that's available out there, right? They use Element, or they use Matrix, right? And then element.io, whatever, for the front end. That's one of the options, and they set all that up, and they did exactly what I'm talking about here, where they made their own shit. They rolled their own and didn't look back. Now, that's the way to do it. That's putting your money where your mouth is. And that is a level of technical knowledge, okay, that I can respect and put some confidence in. Damn Skippy, that's how you do it. Now, could we get to a time in the future where it's not just like app repositories banning apps or whatever, but like full-on operating systems or whatever, not allowing varying apps, things like this? Could we get to that stage? Yeah, maybe. That could happen down the line. And that's where, I actually mentioned this earlier, that's where using something like Briar, which I've also championed since it was in beta. I was like the first person to talk about it. I've brought it up many times. Why isn't Briar in, like when what was happening with WhatsApp and Telegram and everything else earlier in 2021, around concerns around encrypted messaging and everything, I called it conspiratorial. That why wasn't Briar being brought up in any of these conversations? Because it resolves a lot of the censorship, or almost all of the censorship issues that you could possibly think of. Okay. Especially since not even the telcos could censor you when you use Briar. So down the line, we do want to get back to something that I've championed for many years, the whole store and forward model. Now you could say, well, that only scales so far. Yeah, that's true. Okay. But then that's the issue, is that when things get to a certain scale, you lose control. When something gets big enough, you absolutely lose control. And it's a fundamental law of the universe, it seems. So don't try. Okay. You got your groups, whatever, get them set up and use something, get like Briar going, where everything is on device and you're not reliant upon servers. It's that serverless future I always talk about. You're not reliant upon servers, and you're not reliant upon, even like data transmission via telcos or Comcast or whoever. As far as desktop goes, for years, I've been a massive fan of RetroShare. I talked about that forever, and yeah, same problems as like Briar, where, boy, it's a fucking battery drain if you're a laptop, type. But like, it's an entire alternative internet, and it's something that could actually run completely, peer-to-peer, like, on a LAN or something. Which, yeah, hell, while we're dreaming, I can't wait for when LAN actually stands for laser area network instead of local, and like you're using Li-Fi, right? Like that's the fucking dream. Okay, but we're not there. And hopefully we will one day, but we're not there. It's not science fiction, but we're just, the tech isn't available in that way yet. But ultimately, we do have to get to a serverless future. Okay, that said, something like F-Droid, with a lot of F-Droid functionality, is still, I think, useful and could be a part of that, partly because what I talked about at the top, one of its best features was that you could, share APKs locally. Great. Awesome. So, if somebody needs to have this app to communicate, or they need to install this wallet to be able to transact, as long as the person's right next to them and you could, send the APK via Wi-Fi Direct or Bluetooth or something like that. Yes. Perfect. and maybe the app could just cross-check the hash on it to make sure that it's like, that it's the right version of the app and it's not, a malicious version of it. So that's a preview of the directions that we need to go. But to bring it back to the concerns around F-Droid, no, the real solution here is not to stop using F-Droid. The real solution is, you could fork F-Droid and then stop using F-Droid if you want, or just create your own app repository that you can easily share. And it's really not hard to share or to set up like another app repository. It's a pain in the ass to set up your own server or an app repository that F-Droid can accept, but for another user to take advantage of that app repository, it's not difficult to set that up in the app. It's really not. That's the solution here. Okay. And even like with the Freedom Phone, like, why didn't they do that? Because again, and that's part of my problem with a lot of these different projects, especially from like the more conservative end or even the free speech end, is that it doesn't seem like they actually want like their own, little pirate havens or anything where they can have their free speech. What they want is to be able to talk to the dullards on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram or wherever else. And really, when you want to do that, you're not necessarily about, wanting to connect with like-minded people, or you're not really about spreading ideas. You're about wanting to find some yokel to leech money off of. That's what you're going for with that. And hey, look, I'm speaking as somebody who is absolutely affected by this system, right? Like, I got banned off of Twitter. All right. I'm not allowed to be on social media, okay, by the system. So I'm in your boat that hopefully Lauren Southern didn't sink, but you get my point. But I'm not here saying, oh shit, I can't believe it. Oh, this is terrible. Twitter, blah, blah, blah. I just don't care. And I roll forward, and I just count on that listeners, if they want to share this, they'll get it out there however they can. And that I make it available in varying other ways. I just circumvent the system or don't care about it. My email inbox is insane every day. I literally can't keep track of it. Like it's that full. And I can even imagine that the emails that are going to come in after this that are going to say, oh yeah, Stallion, set up your own app repository on F-Droid. Oh boy. Ironically, maybe when Sovryn Tech makes a little more money, I could consider that, because yes, that does take some work. But again, if this is your business, then like it was for Gab, why aren't you doing it? But regardless, I do want safe havens to exist where, as long as whatever your fucking idea or app is, as long as it's not malicious code, okay, that it can sit there, and let the court of opinion, individually or public, make its own decisions and just choose not to install, because no one's forcing you there. And if they are, fucking throw away that device or whatever, don't bother with that shit. Like Google, who forces apps on you. So there it is. We'll end the episode here. Of course, if you have any questions at sovereigntech.com. Feel free to join the Sovryn Tech Telegram group, which I'm very thankful for the listeners bringing this to my attention there. Amazing conversations and people in there all the time. So do feel free to join. If the Telegram app ever goes down, or, somehow Sovryn Tech gets banned from XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I already have the alternatives in place. I have my own server. I could absolutely send out this podcast through my own server. I could even send it out via BitTorrent. I could set up my own groups via my own server if I want to. Like I have all of these things in place if somehow I get canceled more than I already have been, which has already been pretty significant. So again, we'll leave it here. More Sovryn Tech to come, and I will see all of you on the other side. Woo! Hey, is Sovryn Tech not enough for you? Well, let me tell you about something you'll never get enough of. No, I mean it. We're talking about a radio show and podcast that goes all night long, 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night, 365 days a year, and has been going since the early aughts, baby. I am talking about none other than Free Talk Live. It's the show you control. That's right. It's an open phones call-in show that is ready for you. And if you're worried that your voice isn't going to get heard, don't be. We are talking about the only libertarian radio show stateside, and not only that, it's also the number 26 talk show in the United States. Start listening now and go ahead and hit that massive back catalog at freetalklive.com. The Golden Stallion guarantees a good time, and you might even find some episodes with me on them when you do. That's freetalklive.com, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech.